the three of us went to Colortech, and we had an absolutely fantastic time. We could not have asked for a better experience. I'm Meredith Stevens. I teach geometry at Morris County High School.
Dalton. I teach architectural and engineering design, and I teach computer science courses at Cherokee High School.
I'm Sarah Klontz, and I teach 9th grade English at Volunteer High School and also RTI reading.
Okay, so just a little bit about Colortech. Colortech has a little bit of a steep learning curve in terms of what they actually make. So you have some samples. Either you have some color chips and color films, which is what their products go into, or you have a bag of pellets, and that is actually their product. So they make plastic additives. So those additives can be a bunch of different things. They make a lot of whites, so the whites in your trash bags. They also make additives like slip, making plastic slippery, anti-block that makes plastic easy to pull apart, UV packages that protect plastic from breaking down. They make plastic that's good for kosher products, plastic that's good for FDA products, all that kind of thing. So plant one has whites and additives in it. And that is actually the original plant from 1986. They added color in 2014, and that is where they make the majority of their profit. So as you can see, the color chips, those all come from the color part of their line. And so that started in 2014. They can also do special effects. They can have plastic glow under black light. They can, you'll see the bottles, they'll make a speckle, they can make glitter, all different kinds of things. So they actually have a plant here in Morristown, and they have a smaller plant in Brampton, Ontario, but it's actually a German company.
All right, we had some similar preconceptions to the last group, but talk about it a little bit. The picture there shows a lot of factory workers on the floor, and that's kind of what we expected. Although when we actually went to the production floor, it wasn't exactly a ghost town, but you know, there were somewhere between 3 and 5 people sometimes running all of these machines. And what we also were surprised to see is that there were tons and tons of people in offices, like office workers, and we didn't expect that. We kind of had that high tower overlooking the factory workers thought going in, and then we thought, well, these guys are integrated with production. They're people, or they're people, if I can say it that way. They're actually on the floor talking to people, you know, making sure everything's correct. They're not disciplining people, but they're trying to solve problems in a very humane way. And the culture was beautiful, actually. So our preconceptions were really put to rest as soon as we walked through the door and met the administration.
Okay, so a brief overview of our week. So days 1 through 5, basically they took us in HR first, and that process starts in HR. So you have purchasing, and then as our week went on, they took us all throughout, you know, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, and so we started in purchasing, we went through production. You know, the 5 C's is one of their big things that they stress, and the 5 C's are collaboration, communities, confidentiality, continuous improvement, and creativity. So as we saw our week progress, we started out with the purchase order, so we need this order to be we have a customer, they want to purchase this product. We went through safety, they took us through all the different departments, and as you end your week, you ended up in shipping. So someone's ordered the product, we make the product, we send the product. But one of their main things that they stressed was, you know, making the customer happy. So whatever they had to do to make the customer happy, they did it.
Okay, day 2 might actually be our favorite day. Rhonda, don't tell anybody at the plant. But color matching, because they're so into color in plant 2, they have to have really expert color matchers. And so what that picture is actually a color test. And each of us took a color test. Some of us did better than others, I'm sorry, Matt. But Sarah actually only missed one, and so color matchers were like, would you like to leave teaching? We would be happy to have you. So color matching, really, really, really close attention to detail. We're talking colors that you may say, well, isn't that close enough? I mean, I can't see a difference. No, it's not close enough. Sorry. And so they use a spectrophotometer to really tell scientifically that it's not the same. And they may be doing 10 color matches in order to get the the right thing, and they won't bat an eye at that. It's whatever the customer wants. So we saw examples of the Coke Red on the bottles, on the top of Coke bottles, or Sprite Green, and the fact that has to be really, really on, and the customer is not going to accept anything less than that. We also went to technical services. That's also where the majority of the engineers are employed, and they make about 1,000 products at Colortech, and so there's a lot of room where you're making a product for the first time, and the customer may not be happy, or it may not be working for the customer exactly how it was formulated. So there's technical services going out into the field and troubleshooting this. What went wrong? How can we fix it? That kind of thing. And so that was really, really refreshing that they're going to do whatever it is to make it right, even though we have thousands of products, and what that looks like, which is very different, I think, than other industries.
All right, by the time we got to the technical services lab, it really became apparent to us that everybody needs to be, I guess, data aware. And so everybody was using Excel to track all of these problems that needed to be solved. So a problem comes down the line, it goes into Salesforce, they have to do trials to figure out how they're going to fix the problem. It goes through all sorts of departments, and it's not all magic either. You know, we kind of got that idea at first because it was all behind the scenes in the office. But then we went to the production floors and saw that people actually have to make runs of these plastic products, and then if there's any particle that's the wrong color, the wrong substance in any way, it has to be rerun. And if the trials don't make it, you know, so one of these trials at one of those meetings had run 18 times, and it had to because the customer said it had to. And the customer is always right, especially in this business with hundreds of competitors domestically, thousands internationally. And then by the time we got to receiving, accountability was still there. It was just, sometimes when you walk into a massive facility like that, and you meet somebody, you kind of expect, well, I already know what you do, but we don't. We really didn't. Even in their office in receiving, they were using Excel databases. They were trying to make sure that everything was arriving on time, and if they did receive their stuff through the rail yard on time, it wasn't just that. They had to make sure they got into the facility and into the product on time and shipped out on time. Everything just had to be very efficient. And the engineers kind of, I guess, they play that like a game. It's their way of making their job interesting. Efficiency is always on their mind. So, yeah.
All right, so day 4 was more production, so that's when we got to play with the pellets. My biggest dream was just to jump into one of those boxes of pellets, but it didn't happen. So we actually got to see the pellets made. So one of the things that they stressed was note taking. So with my students, they don't want to take notes. That's not fun, but that's something that you have to do. You know, everything can't be fun. You have to take notes. Bottom line up front, when you're sending out emails, not everyone wants to read a 2-page email. Okay, so what's going on here? What do we need to know? So tell us what you want up front. Then the ability to teach and having a positive attitude. As we made it on over to quality assurance, attention to detail was very important. Following procedures and accountability. So teaching our students, instilling those things in our students is what we need to be doing in our classrooms, so that when they get to these jobs or when they get to college, these are the things that we've taught them and they know how to do it.
On day 5, our last day, we did production at plant 1. Again, that's the whites and additives. We talked a lot with the plant manager, and he was just saying how much work ethic and morals really have to do with what makes a good worker. And the fact that they're constantly cleaning, if you can imagine, color everywhere, white everywhere, and having to clean that up all the time. The factory was incredibly clean for having that much powdered stuff all over. And so the fact that maybe you fix the machine and that's great, but you're going to be cleaning now because we're here to make sure everything runs according to plan. And also accountability, making sure, I don't think I've been in an organization before where everybody is pulling in the same direction and saying, this is not his job and this is my job. It's all of our job to get the right thing to the customer, because that's how we're going to stay competitive and that's how we're going to stay in business. And then of course shipping, dependability, critical thinking, being able to load those trucks so that they're legal and safe. And so following procedure and safety protocols. So that's actually inside of a semi that they're loading with, as you can see, gigantic boxes all filled with plastic pellets.
All right, so we separated things into hard skills and soft skills. A lot of times the hard skills are pretty obvious. We always talk about math and science and education. In addition to that, we had a lot of software that people needed to be aware of, if not proficient in. Excel was our continuous theme. Everybody was using Excel, including people on the production floor and in shipping. Software like Salesforce to track all of the open trials and open issues that were trying to be resolved. And SimPro is kind of an older program, and we didn't actually put Iris in this, but it's a new project that they're developing to take some of these software packages and turn them into one. So database referencing, Excel to track the data, all of that's very important. As far as soft skills go, everybody had to be a good communicator. One of the ways to rise through the ranks is to be a good communicator and a good teacher. You have to have people skills, and you could be the smartest person on the production floor or any of these parts of the plant, but you're not going to rise up unless you're actually a people person and unless you can teach. In addition to that, creativity, things are done the same way in a lot of production facilities, but creativity is what gets you above your competitors, and so they were really looking for that too. And in addition to that, obviously teamwork, and we try to incorporate that into our classrooms, but not just because it's forced, but because it really does help. The kids oftentimes grow up playing video games and just staying in their own little isolated area of their bedroom or whatever. And when they meet somebody for the first time, and whether it's in school or daycare or whatever, it is an awkward moment. And I keep reading about how people, how the pressures are on them, and it seems like social pressures are what's rising the kids' levels of anxiety these days. And so teamwork is one of the best ways to make them a little bit more, adjusted, or help them be adjusted.
All right, so within degrees and certifications that are needed within that field, we were looking at 4-year degrees, so engineering, the sciences, IT, and business. 1 to 2 year degrees, you have your maintenance people, lab technicians, and then if you are within that company and you're going on to get a degree that will help their company, they have a program where they will actually pay for your degree. So we thought that was interesting.
And this is just a little bit about what each of us saw would be helpful in terms of what we're doing in our classrooms. So I really want to do a lot more with mental math calculations. When I talk to people on the line, they're like, if I'm divided in my head, I can figure out how long I'm going to be with this particular run. And that, that's helpful. I've got some coworkers that can't do that. That kind of thing. And then judging reasonableness. People in labs were like, all you people in here, and they don't realize that what they're typing into Excel doesn't make any sense. And so that they need to go back. People in the color lab were saying, well, we have, we want to cut yellow by 10% in this next trial. Well, if you've got somebody that isn't good with percentages, that doesn't mean a whole lot. And so what does that really mean? Unit conversions, they've got things coming in kilograms and they're going out in pounds. So trying to figure all that out. And then, critical thinking, real world applications, and then making my kids explain more of what they're doing. The plant managers were saying it was difficult to have an operator then switch over to another operator on the next shift, and they're not able to say where they are in the run and what they've already done. And that's, we should have kids that are able to describe what they've actually done and the reasoning behind what they're doing.
Okay, so my takeaway from this was every office that we entered, communication is key. Communication is key. So I teach English. I plan to take that back to my classroom and work with my students on knowing who your audience is, knowing what type, your word choice and the language that you use. So if I'm in a meeting with someone, the language in my word choice is going to be different than if I'm texting my best friend. So they need to understand that there's differences, and there's a time for a certain type of language and word choice, and there's a time that we need to switch the gears and amp it up. So there's formal and informal settings. So knowing the audience, the purpose for your writing, and the appropriate language and word choice. That's how I plan to apply it in my classroom.
My major takeaway, obviously I had some preconceptions about how this would apply to architecture and engineering, facilities layout, all sorts of different divisions of engineering. And I was pretty much right about that. But as far as computer science goes, I really had some major takeaways there. The fact that Excel and SimPro and SQL servers were just integrated in everything they did. Everywhere you walked in this facility, there were screens with data recordings and ways that you could create queries through these databases to figure out what's going on as far as the plant as a whole. So in my classes, I start out in computer science fundamentals class, and then it moves into web design. And there's really just a speed bump in the third web design class that mentions SQL very briefly. But I feel like maybe it should be a little more thoroughly integrated into the earlier classes, and maybe I'll do that on my own. I know it's not easy to step outside of the standards and stay on track, but I really feel like that could be important, especially for local industry, to get my kids experienced with those sorts of things.
And finally, Rhonda Bailey's here. Thank you so much for everything. Colortech was just fantastic. You could not ask for friendlier people, and we will be singing your praises all throughout Morristown. And also, the picture on the right, they actually do a project with Hamlin County Schools where they have middle schoolers take their pellets and take their films and make art. And so I found one of my kids from this past year on the wall. So this is Caroline Thompson. She's fantastic. So that's her artwork. So.
Not just Rhonda, but thank all of you that supported us in this.
Yes, thank
Thank
you so
you
much.
so much.